Okay, back on the driver's side, left-hand side of the car, you can see right in here, that's the lower section of the lock pillar that comes down into the rocker panel area, and here's the flange right here that's spot welded to the flange of the rocker panel. And in video 5 I mentioned that I'm going to have to cut a little bit of this away in order to clearance to rotate the new inner rocker panel up into place. Rather than do that, it's difficult to get to, and since this body mount's got to be rebuilt, I'm going to go ahead and just cut on one side of this body mount, and on the other side of the body mount leave a little hinge point right here and just bend this out of the way. That would be the easiest thing to do, and I think from there I'll be able to rotate the new rocker panel up into place. And then also here is a view of the baffle that is also an obstruction that prevents you from rotating the new rocker panel into place. You can see the little flange right there with a spot weld where it's spot welded to the bottom side of the door seal on the rocker panel, and there's another little flange on the other side that's also spot welded. I'm going to drill those spot welds or break those spot welds and go ahead and get this baffle out of my way too. And that way I can rotate the new rocker into place, and then I'm going to mark where all my plug welds are going and just test fit the rocker and cut it to length and get ready to install it. That should give me enough room. So that's all that's left of the passenger side, and here's the driver's side is a little bit more intact, so I should be able to figure out what it's supposed to look like, I guess. There's those two tabs that were spot welded to the bottom side of the door seal of the rocker panel, and then this was a tab as well right here facing the back of the car. So I'll just have to make new ones. So this is the front of the car on the left side, the driver's side, and I got the inner rocker panel into position. I pushed it forward till it was flush with this flange right here. You can just barely see a little bit of the flange right there. And also I push it up until it's flush with this steel plate right here. And then the bottom of the rocker panel it'll be flush with the flange on the outer rocker panel right in here. But also check this dimension from this body mount bracket from here to the bottom edge of the rocker. Should be about 3/4 of an inch or 7/8 right in there. Going towards the back of the car, this is the next body mount. This is the one that I had to cut out of the way and hinge it out of the way. The lower section of the lock pillar comes down and is also in the way, and it wound up, this area here still gave me trouble because the flange on my inner rocker panel still touched that lower area of the lock pillar and made it difficult to slide upwards into position. It might have made it easier if I had cut out a little crescent moon shape out of the flange of the rocker panel to clearance it, so it would have slid up a little easier. But I didn't do that. I went from above in the cab and used a pry bar and pried the flange a little bit and got it to slide past where it needed to be to get it into position, so I was flush right here. Going a little further towards the back of the car, here's that body mount that's below the lock pillar, and here's the rocker, continues to be flush with the flange on the outer rocker, and right here's where the inner rocker flange, which flanges outward so you can't see it, it touches the floor pan. This is your floor pan here. I can't get to the spot weld, so I'll stitch weld it right in here, but you need to make sure that you're tight up against the floor pan right here, this area here. And it definitely helped to have the wheel off, because I had to slide that inner rocker way back here before I slid it forward to get it into position. And of course it helped not to have this end cap in place as well. And before I test fitted this inner rocker, I should have put the end cap in and marked it so I could get the length on it, but I didn't. I forgot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a reference point right here, and that's to reference this end right here. And then when I put the end cap in and test fit it, I can mark in here so I can get the length of my rocker panel later. And just like the passenger side, I'll mark where my plug welds are going, and also the edge of these flanges on the body mounts, so that when I POR 15 this thing, I can avoid those areas. And I gotta drill some holes to plug weld onto the steel plate. And on the flange. You got to get it past that plate before you can pull it straight down. So the flange on the top of the inner rocker panel is binding really bad on the lower section of that lock pillar where it comes down into the rocker area. So I'm going to have to cut that lower section loose and bend it out of the way. So another test fit on the passenger side, the right hand side of the car. I'm going to go ahead now and take this mark that I put right here with the Sharpie. You can barely see it. I'm going to go ahead and transfer that up onto the new inner rocker panel, and that mark represents where the flange starts, and so that will give me the length of the inner rocker and where to start the flange. The flange is bent inward, inboard of the car. And incidentally to this area right here, pushes up. This flange right here pushes up in spot welds or plug welds to this area right here. But also right up in here, about an inch before you get to the flange, the floor pan, it's hard to see, but it kind of rolls upward about 3/8 of an inch. So there's a little contour right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put a relief cut in the new inner rocker panel right along here. And I'm going to push the flange up into this concave area right here and weld a small piece in there so that I'm filling in this void right here. So test fitting the inner rocker panel on the driver's side was too difficult with this lower section of the lock pillar still intact. It normally comes down here and there's a little tab right here that spot welds to the outer rocker panel. I went ahead and cut it loose right here and hammered the lower section of the lock pillar out of the way. It made it a lot easier getting the inner rocker in and out. And I'll repair this at some point in time, probably when I'm working on the outer rocker panels and I have it opened back up from the outside. And so here's the flange. Here's the flange, and here's that little contour I was talking about. And there it is, dressed up. Alright. Still on the passenger side, I'm going to go ahead and wire wheel around the holes that I'm going to be plug welding to get the POR15 away from them. And when I took the inner rockers out, I was doing a lot of hammering in here, so you want to make sure that this area here, these flanges, stay nice and straight. Put a straight edge on them. They should be in line with each other. And same as the driver's side. Slide the passenger side into place. And just make sure the rocker is tight against the floor pan right here. And this is the area between the lock pillar body mount and the last body mount. Just want to make sure it's tight up against there and clamp it into place. So I took the inner rocker back out at the last minute and decided to go ahead and put these two holes back in. These are access holes from the factory that allow you to get to a couple of bolts right here. There's a bracket behind here that's all part of the fender connection. And I was going to leave them deleted or covered up because it's a source of water and moisture to get in. But at the last minute I decided to go ahead and put them back, and I'll just put either grommets on them or I'll fill them with seam sealer. Alright, so here's the end cap that I made for the rocker panels, and I went ahead and installed this captive nut assembly. That's what the hardware mounts to for the fender skirts. I just tacked the cage onto the back like the original was from the factory, and I've treated this, and before I install it I'm going to paint the outside and paint the inside to hopefully keep it from rusting, but it just goes in there like that. I need to work this flange flat a little bit, and I might wind up reinforcing this flange because it's kind of weak, very weak metal right there, and so it'll be eventually get welded up in here, and it'll get plug welded here to the flange of the rocker panel. And in fact, I'll probably drill the holes in the back of the rocker panel and plug weld it from the back, and then it gets plug welded here as well. But I've got this hole right here and here, and I've got Bondo in this section of the lower rocker panel. So this is going to wind up getting cut out, so it doesn't make any sense to plug weld it here at this point in time. In fact, I'm not even going to install it right now. I'm gonna hold up on it, and I'll install it later. And I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. It's getting kind of long.